Welcome and welcome back, guys. I just wanted to let you guys know I did have to take some time off for some personal family stuff that was going on, but I am back and we are going to hop right into it. But I did come back to a very nice surprise. Thank you guys for blowing up that one video about the dating craziness. We do have more of that coming down the pipeline. Also, some wedding drama, some more Reddit stories. That, I like reading about other people's drama. I don't want to be involved in it, but. But I do like reading about other people's drama. So let's hop right into it.
I got a spooky story time from a woman named Amara who told me for a 3-month period in 2022, she was receiving late night phone calls from her own number. And when she started answering, the caller would reveal very intimate personal details about her own life. The first few times the number popped up, it was around 2 a.m, and she didn't answer because she thought it was spam. But one night she was spending the night with her boyfriend Michael at her apartment when the number popped up again, and she was half asleep, but she decided to answer. So she answers, she says, "Hello." There is a clicking noise, and then this whispering, creepy, robotic voice says, "Do you value your own self-worth, Amara?" And she says, "Who is this?" And the caller hangs up. She wakes up Michael. He tells her it was probably just a prank and just to go back to sleep. She and Michael had been dating about 3 months. It was a long-distance relationship. They had met at the Denver airport. Amara lived in Maryland, and she was in Colorado for a girls' trip, so she was grabbing a drink at the bar while waiting for her flight. And this man sat down next to her. He was getting a drink. They got to talking. He was going out of town for work. He was also waiting for his flight. He was going to a different city, but he told her he was going to be in Maryland in the next month for work. So they exchanged numbers. He tells her he's going to take her out to dinner when he gets to Maryland. They text a little bit here and there, nothing too serious. He's polite, he's funny, and she enjoys texting with him. He shows up in Maryland about a month later. He says, "Do you still want to grab dinner?" She says yes. They go out, they hit it off, they have a great time. While at dinner, he tells her basically that he travels all the time for work, but he's in Maryland pretty frequently. And he also tells her that he has an 8-year-old daughter. She's like, "Oh, what about your baby mama?" He's like, "Oh, like that was a long time ago. Like everything's cool. I've been single." Dinner ends, they go their separate ways, but they continue texting, and he's back the next month. And the next time he comes, they pretty much spend all of his free time while he's there together. He indicates before he leaves that he wants to take their relationship a step further, and she's down with it. She likes it. And the long distance relationship actually works for her because she is a self-described workaholic. She doesn't have a lot of free time, and dating in her city just wasn't really working out for her. So her relationship with Michael was beneficial because she didn't have to worry about spending all this time that she didn't have with somebody in her city. Also, Michael was like very sweet, like words of affirmation guy. He's always texting her about how beautiful she is, how he can't wait to see her next. And one day he's texting her while she's at work, and he's like, "I'm going to plan us a surprise trip the following weekend." She's like, "Oh my God, that's so exciting. Where are we going?" He's like, "I'm not telling you. It's going to be really nice, really relaxing. Bring some nice clothes. We're going to get massages. It'll just be a really, really nice weekend." So she's all excited. He tells her he's going to fly into Maryland a day early so he can spend the night with her before they go on this trip. 3 nights before he arrives, she gets the first phone call from her own number. She's confused when she looks at it, but she figures it was just like a spam caller spoofing her own number, so she ignores it. They call again the next night. The next night he flies in, they go to dinner, they have a really nice night, and they're sleeping at her apartment when she gets the phone call that she answered when the caller asks if she values her own self-worth. So when that happens, Michael tells her it's just a prank, and she's a little bit creeped out, but she's like, "You know what, he's probably right. Like, I'm not going to give that much thought to it." She goes to sleep. She's all excited for their trip the next day. They fly out, they go to this really nice spot. She didn't say where they went, but she said it was a very cute, small mountain town. On the trip, Michael is talking about how much he likes her, how beautiful she is, how much he values her work ethic, and he says that he can see long-term potential and that maybe eventually he could consider moving to Maryland because his company has an office there. And Amara is just stoked. She was not looking for a relationship, but this is just like a pleasant surprise, and she is really feeling him. He flies back to Maryland with her. They spend one more night, and she's really sad when he has to go home the next day. The next day, Amara goes to work, and while she's at work, she receives a flower delivery, and the bouquet is primarily lilies. And Amara has a severe flower allergy, and lilies are one of the flowers that upsets her. So she doesn't want to seem unappreciative, but she calls Michael later that day, and she's like, "Hey, that bouquet was so nice, but just so you know, I'm really allergic to lilies." And he's like, "Okay, that's good to know, but I didn't send you flowers." And then she said she felt stupid because she was just assuming that he sent her flowers when he didn't. So she was like, "Oh, I'm sorry. Like, I guess there wasn't a card on there. Like, whatever. I just assumed that you did." And he was like, "No, honestly, like, I should have sent you flowers after that nice weekend we had." So she just assumes the flowers were sent by like a client or something. She doesn't give it that much thought. Michael wasn't supposed to be back in Maryland for about 2 more months, and she was really bummed about it. She would text him. She'd be like, "Hey, like, if you have a spare weekend or something, you know, maybe you could fly down or I could fly there." And he was just like, "Oh, like, these are all bad weekends. Like, I have my daughter, this and that." So she was trying to deal with it because she signed up for a long distance relationship, you know, but she was just so excited after that spa trip that it was a little bit disappointing. And during the 2 months that led up to Michael coming back to town, she would get more frequent late night phone calls around 2 a.m. from her own number. And she wasn't really connecting the dots because Michael was there the first night that she answered, so she knew it wasn't him. But she really did just think it was a prank because the messages at first were ominous. They were just like, do you think you're a good person? Do you value yourself? Do you think you're beautiful? But then she really started to get creeped out when they became more detailed and more personal. In one instance, she answered the phone and there was a clicking, and then the robotic voice said, I saw the blue blouse you were wearing at work yesterday. Why did you stay late? So at that point, she knew that the caller was watching her. So that one really scared her. So she calls Michael in the morning, she tells him, and he's like, I really think it's just one of your coworkers or somebody like playing a joke on you. She's like, okay, well, I would really appreciate it if you could help me get to the bottom of this. And he's like, you know what? I have my daughter today. I just really don't have the extra time to be dealing with your perceived problems. So she's like mad at him. She's like, that was rude. And like, she hangs up the phone on him. Before bed, she thinks about it and she's like, you know what? I am being kind of selfish. Like, he doesn't get a lot of time with his daughter. So when he does, I don't want to like interrupt it. And she decides that she's going to call him in the morning and apologize. So that night she goes to sleep, but then she gets another phone call. And this time when she answers, the caller asks if she thinks Michael's daughter knows about her. So when she hangs up the call, she calls Michael immediately. She's like, this is too weird. I need to get to the bottom of this right now. She calls him, his phone goes straight to voicemail. She tries him again at like 6, 7, 8 in the morning, and finally he answers. She's like, what's up? She tells him what the caller said, and he blows up on her. He's like, why are you bringing my daughter into this? Like, this is weird. I don't like this. I don't think I can do this with you. She's like, I'm not bringing your daughter into it. Like, whoever is watching me is. And he tells her, you know what? I don't know if I want to see you this weekend when I'm there. I gotta go. So they don't talk for 3 days until that weekend when he's supposed to be back in town after 2 months of not seeing him. The whole thing did not sit right with her, so she's texting him. He's ignoring all her texts until that Saturday night when he texts her, hey, I'm sorry for how I acted. Would you want to meet up with me? She's like, yeah, come over. She said that she at least wanted closure if they were going to break up. So he comes over. They get to talking. He tells her he's sorry and that he's just had some stress trying to balance like work and his relationship with his daughter and his relationship with her. They hook up, they go to sleep at her house. She gets a call that night at 2 a.m. and the caller says, look at the man sleeping next to you. He's not who he seems. The caller hangs up. Immediate alarm bells. She's freaking out. She hits him. She wakes him up. She's like, get up. She tells him what the caller said, and Michael sits up in bed and he's like, all right, I gotta come clean about something. My ex is psychotic. She's crazy. She is probably stalking you. She's like, I thought you and your baby mama were cool. He's like, not really. Like, we split up like 2 years ago and she's just been like kind of stalking my life ever since. She probably figured out about you and now she's just like tormenting me through you. He's like, I'll get it figured out. Don't worry about it. Just go back to sleep. But Amara is mad that he lied to her, so they spend the rest of the night fighting. He ends up leaving her apartment at like 4 a.m. and going to a hotel. Amara decides after that night she is done with him. She can't trust him. She doesn't want anything to do with him. So she blocks his number and she's done with it. A few days later, she gets a package in her apartment complex mailroom and she goes to grab it. She doesn't know who it's from. She didn't order anything. And it's addressed to her. So she takes it upstairs. She opens it up. And it's a bunch of photographs of her in various places around her city, some with Michael. Underneath all of the photographs is a copy of his marriage license with a note that says, you were just another layover. Congratulations, you can have him. I'm taking him for all he's worth in this divorce. So all of the late night phone calls were his wife. She had hired a private investigator to track them. So Amara said that she never actually got in contact with the wife. She never talked to Michael again, but she assumes that there were others. She also doesn't know if the wife is the one that sent her lilies because she doesn't know how the wife would know about her lily allergy, except for a post she made on Instagram back in like 2017. Amara ended her email by saying, ladies, be careful, know who you're talking to, do your homework, and Google someone before you just take their word for everything. Amara said she didn't want to be tagged, but that is her real name. She said I could use it, and Michael was his real name as well. She said she didn't want to be tagged because she didn't want people to drag her in the comments for seeing a married man, even though she didn't know. Keep sending me your spooky, scary stories. I'll keep adding them to this playlist.
I knew it. 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 Okay, so right around when it got to the do you value your self-worth line, that sounds like something that a jealous ex or a psycho jealous ex would say to someone trying to get them away from the man that they're focusing on or the person that they're focusing on. Um, and then the way that he reacted when she told him repeatedly about these things, and he was like, I don't have time for your perceived problems. I knew that he knew something that he wasn't telling her. Like, this is absolutely wild, okay? If you have a crazy ex, you need to warn the person that you are dating. I'm not saying that you're undateable at that, but at the very least, you need to warn the person that you're dating about what they're jumping into, because you can't just like throw somebody into this kind of situation, it's not going to go well. Like, yeah, you're going to lose a lot of dates by telling people that, like, hey, I have a crazy ex that's stalking me, blah, blah, blah. You might get into this and, and things like that, or they may try to pull you into this situation. But at least you're giving them the heads up, because honestly, if you don't give them the heads up, 100% of people will leave. Well, 99, but almost 100% of people would and should leave, because at that point you could have warned them about something that was for their safety, but you didn't. Next story.
A follower named Sydney emailed me and she was like, I have a spooky story time about the peeping Tom ghost that used to watch me in the shower. So it turns out after men die, some of them will still be creepy. So she went to UNC in Greeley, Colorado. When she was doing the university tour, it was student led, and they told her all about the university lore and how old it was and how many people had passed away on campus. She moves in, she decides to go there, and she's living in a dorm called Harrison Hall, if anyone's familiar. Her first encounter with the peeping Tom ghost was one day when she was in the bathroom. She said she had suite mates and there was like a shared bathroom, but she's in the shower one day and she notices like a dark figure standing in the bathroom, but she can't see because I guess it was like some kind of mirrored glass or something. She opens the shower door, there's no one there. She's like, okay, weird, whatever. But then it happened again. So she gets to talking to some of the other girls who live in Harrison Hall, and they tell her similar experiences about feeling watched or seeing a figure in the bathroom while they're showering. Come to find out, there is a trash chute at like the end of one of the hallways in there, and students used to use it to throw down laundry, to do laundry in the basement, or like trash. But one day, a long time before Sydney went there, apparently some kids threw some bricks down there and unalived a janitor who was in the basement. Sydney's email and like tone was pretty lighthearted in the email, and it was actually pretty funny. I feel like I have a good gauge on her sense of humor, because she was like, yeah, I kept showering, he kept appearing in there when I would shower, I would always see the figure, but I was like, whatever, it's just peeping Tom, like he's a ghost, what's he gonna do, he's just like an old creepy janitor who likes watching young girls shower. She said the only time he really scared her was one night when she was sitting alone in her room and she was doing homework at her desk, and the door was like cracked open, I guess, into the hallway, and she saw a male figure come in the door in like a split second and rush toward her, and then it was just gone. And she was like, nope, not going to do this, and she went to one of her other suite mates' rooms. Her and the other girl are talking. The other girl tells her a story about one night she was going in to go to the bathroom. She tries to push the door open, and it felt like somebody was pushing it closed from the other side. So she was like, who's in there? Like, who's keeping me out? So she pushes on the door harder, and she said there was nobody on the other side. Like, the door just like swung open and she fell forward because there was nobody holding the door closed. Sydney said she had another instance with peeping Tom when one night she was sitting at her desk doing homework, and she tried to scoot her chair backward, but her chair wouldn't budge. So she turns around to see what's blocking the chair, and there's nothing there. So she tries to scoot again and it won't move. She said there was nobody there, but she could feel somebody breathing on her neck. So she says out loud, hey, peeping Tom, if you're here, I really need to get up. I really need to use the bathroom. So if you could please move so I could move my chair, I would like to get up. And she said she scooted her chair back again and it moved. He was gone. While all this was going on, she mentioned it to her roommate, and she's like, have you ever seen anything weird? Her roommate's like, no, like, I don't believe in that stuff. I think you're just making it up. It wasn't long after that, though, when her roommate calls her frantic one night while Sydney's out, and her roommate apparently had gone in the room, the lights were off, and she saw Sydney laying in her bed. So she flips the lights on, but there was nobody there. Her roommate tells her that she had watched the sheets go back to like a flat position when she turned on the lights, as if the thing had just suddenly vanished into thin air. Says her last experience with the peeping Tom ghost was scary. She was in her room again doing homework at her desk alone when she felt someone breathing on her neck again. And she said she is religious. So she said out loud, I don't know what you are, but if you're demonic, if you have ill intentions toward me, I would like you to leave. And she said after that, she had no more experiences with him. She was never bothered in the shower again. It was like he moved on to haunt somebody else. Sydney said I could use her real name. She said I could tag her, but I'm actually waiting for her to get back to me with her username. So once she sends it, I'm going to put her in the caption, but she'll be here. She'll be here to answer comments, and she wants to know if anybody who went to UNC has any similar experiences. Keep sending me your spooky scary stories. I have a form in my bio that you can fill out if you want to send them to me directly in an email, and I'll keep adding them to this playlist.
Okay, so first, I love this creator for like the spooky scary times and stuff that she does. She's awesome, and she's a great, like, reteller of stories. She makes it, detailed without making it too long. I love that she does that. Her name on TikTok is at Ashley Inc. Ashley, you're awesome. Um, Secondly, a peeping Tom ghost, like for real. Oh, oh my goodness. Like we don't have enough to be worried about in in regular life. Now in the afterlife, now we have to deal with peeping toms as well. Like it feels like it's never ending sometimes. Um but like, I do believe in this stuff. I've said before that we don't even know the full extent of everything that is possible on Earth. We haven't even explored, there's 70% of the ocean that is unexplored. We have no idea what's down there. There's no way that we can possibly understand everything that is going on in Earth, in existence, and things like that. So I do believe in these kind of stories. So maybe one day there will be some kind of explanation or, scientific thing, but that day is not today. So we just have to rely on our stories with each other. So, but oh my goodness, the way I would just like be so unfazed by this, just be like, all right, I would probably behave the same way that Sydney did. It's just like, like, hey, I need you to like, not be here anymore because you're getting on my nerves rather than scaring me. Next story.
Tell me a story about a time that you know that you saw something, but you don't ever tell this story because you know that no one would ever believe you. I don't think I've ever told this story before because I would sound like an insane person, but I know it happened. I want to be creeped out. I just watched the video of the girl, the Lyft driver in New Orleans, who says she picked up a vampire. I want more stories like that, but I'll tell you mine. When I was 7, my family was living in a suburb of Chicago about 30 minutes southwest of the city. My parents were out. They went bowling every Friday night. So I know it was a Friday. Our babysitter, Maria, was over. She was a teenager, probably 16, 17 at the time, and my little sister was about 2. We lived in a split level. So my sister and Maria are downstairs and I'm in the kitchen. I was looking out the back window. Honestly, probably waiting for our little neighbor boy to come outside because I had a crush on him and I was always running outside whenever I saw he would come out. But in our backyard, there was an apple tree, there was a lake, and then there was a fence separating our yard from the neighbor boy's house. It's dusk. The sun is pretty much set. And I see a black panther jump over the fence and come down, stand underneath the apple tree. It was so tall that its shoulders almost came up to the first set of branches. Jet black fur. And we had a house cat, so I know what the house cat size is in relation to this thing. This thing was easily 6 or 7 times the size of our cat. So I start calling for Maria, yelling at her to come up to the kitchen to see this black panther in our backyard. She was taking her time. My sister was crying and she was tending to her. I'm standing there mesmerized by this black panther, and it turns and it looks at me and it makes eye contact. And on its head, this thing was jet black, but on its head, it had a little patch of white fur just going right like this. And we just stare at each other for a good 5 seconds or so. I hear Maria stirring. She's coming into the kitchen, and as she's walking into the kitchen, the panther runs into the lake. I was like, there was a panther in our backyard. Maria's like, it was just a house cat. I'm like, no, it was a panther. Fast forward to later on that night, my parents still aren't home. I'm in bed. I hear our doorbell. It's probably close to 11 o'clock because my parents were still out. They usually came home around 1 in the morning. So naturally I hear the doorbell ring. I get out of bed. I go to the top of the stairs and I see Maria answering the door. And I'm creeping on the stairs, and she lets this man in, and he's wearing all black. He was very pale. And I hear him tell her basically that he was a traveler who lost his way and he needed to use our phone. It was the 90s, so people didn't have cell phones easily accessible, so he just wanted to use our landline. So Maria lets him in. He's using the phone. It's very muffled. I can't hear what he's saying. I remember the conversation, but I don't. That's where mine and this girl's stories are similar. So after he makes his phone call, he's turning to leave. He walks past the stairs. He looks up at me because I'm still sitting at the top of it, and I see on his head he has a little patch of white hair in the same spot that the panther had. And he looks at Maria and he goes, "Thank you for your help. It's really easy to get lost in the shadows." And he leaves. Now this man shook me. I could not sleep that night. So when my parents got home, I was still awake in bed. I ran downstairs. I told them all about the panther. They chalked it up to an overactive imagination, and they were like, it was just a house cat. You're just letting your imagination get the best of you. And I told them about the man. They were pissed. They were fuming. They fired Maria for letting a strange man into our house, as they should have. But yeah, I don't know. I've looked into it. There have been tons of Black Panther sightings all over Illinois, close to Chicago, and yet the Department of Natural Resources maintains that there are no Black Panthers in Illinois. So yeah, stitch this or let me know in the comments your story because I know I'm not the only one.
So I like to make jokes when I'm in uncomfortable situations sometimes. So the first thing that I thought of when she was telling this story was, girl, you just got a visit from Wakanda. But I did look it up, and there were several sightings of Black Panthers in the Illinois area around the 1980s, even though the wildlife thing is saying that panthers haven't lived in the area for over 100 years. There were hunters who were hunting these panthers that were being sighted. So it's very strange to have like, that large of a panther with that identifiable of a mark, to be seen, and then later to see the man with the same identifiable patch of hair, like, I would be entirely creeped out. Like, I would know that there is something else going on. Like, there's something to be believed in there. And I do agree with the parents for firing the babysitter for letting a strange man into your house in the middle of the night. Um, yeah, no, that's absolutely wild. Like, uh, I would have, at the very least, like, brought the phone to the door if it was one of the cordless kinds, or, like, if it was one of the ones with the long cord. But if it wasn't, sorry, no, you can't come in the house. I am a teenager alone with two small girls, and letting a man in the house in the middle of the night. Ugh, that makes it even creepier. Okay. And I'm gonna tell my own, like, weird, creepy story here, because this, to this day, like, I use this story as an example of one of the many, but one of the many reasons why I believe that things like this exist. So, long, long time ago, me and my ex-husband, we were still just dating at this time, okay? And we went to go camping in the woods. We lived in New Jersey. We were out in the middle of the Pine Barrens, all right? I had this tiny blue Chevy S10, like, tiny blue truck. It literally just was like, look it up. It's the tiniest truck ever. But so we pack all our stuff in the back of the truck. We'd go out camping and stuff like that. And every time we would go camping, what I would do is I would take the pine needles and bits of wood and stuff like that. And around the base of trees, I would make little fairy houses. And then as we were starting the fire, I would say, like, thank you for giving us passage. Thank you for letting us stay in your area, blah, blah, blah. I would say thank you to the fairies. Now, my ex-husband would roll his eyes every time, but before this, he would never say anything. But this one time, he decided to just look me dead in the eyes and say, "Man, F those fairies." And, and boy, did that start off the chain of something that we did not know was coming down the road. So we're driving through the trails and just having a fun time, just, like, mud hopping and, like, going through, like, some of the trails and stuff, and visiting some of the other, like, little monuments and things that are in the area, and just driving down the trails, having fun. Okay. And my truck, there was a giant puddle of water. It had recently rained, but everywhere else was dry except for this one giant puddle of water. And it looked like it was shallow enough to drive through, but I was still looking to see if there was another way around it. And he was like, "Oh, well, I think it's shallow enough to drive through." And I was like, "Oh, I don't want to take the chance." And he was like, "No, just drive through it. It'll be fine." It wasn't fine. Um, so my truck got stuck in this puddle of water. It was so deceptively deep that the water started pouring into my truck. It started coming up. It's a small truck, so it was very low to the ground to begin with. And it started pouring into the doors and stuff, and made it up to, like, just, like, right below where the electronics and stuff would have started. So we get out of the car. Now, we're in the Pine Barrens in Wharton State Forest. There's nobody out there. Okay. There's nobody out there. So we start walking back towards our campsite. We make it back to our campsite, and we're just like, okay, well, we're going to have to start hoofing it back to the ranger station. The problem is that to get back to where any possible person would be, um, I think it was maybe about a good, I want to say it's maybe about a good 4, 5 miles. So we start walking. It's starting to, like, get a little dusky. It's not exactly dark, but we know dark is coming up soon. And by the time we get there, it is going to be dark. Um, so we're walking down this road, and, like, we brought a couple snacks with us and stuff like that. And we're walking, and I was like, "See what you did?" I was like, "Fairies trapped us," even though, because you said F the fairies. And he was like, "No, that's not it, blah, blah, blah." And I was like, "No, no, no, no. You need to apologize to the fairies." I wouldn't let it go. I asked him over and over again to apologize to the fairies, and then finally he gave in, and he was like, "Fine, sorry. I'm sorry, fairies. Please forgive me. I'm so sorry." Um, literally 20 seconds after he apologized to the fairies, one of the rangers were driving towards us. They had like literally just came around the corner of the trail that we were walking on and was driving towards us and was able to take us back to where my truck was and pull us out. As they're pulling us out, I looked to the left of where the puddle was, and there was a clear path around the trees to go around that puddle that I did not see the first time that we were there. And I was just so flabbergasted by this whole situation. And I've never let him live that down, even though it's been decades. So, and funny enough, his name is Mike too. And I don't feel like, some type of way about giving out his name because there are so many Mikes in this world. It's going to be so hard to identify which one it actually is. So anyway, that's my weird story. So thanks for, if you're listening for this long, thanks for sticking around. Please like, comment, and subscribe. I appreciate anyone who has been listening and watching my videos. I've seen that, there's a little bit of growth starting to happen, and I'm really enjoying it. I just love, like the channel name says, I talk too much, and you guys are the ones that I'm talking to. So thanks for watching, and